Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Keith and you're watching Barber's Auto Help. Today I've got this 2002 Honda Accord with a 2.3 liter Vtech engine in it, and we're going to be replacing the Vtec Solenoid Gaskets. The Vtec Solenoid lives right back there, just rearward of the distributor on the back side of the cylinder head, and they're pretty common for leaking. I can't tell you how many of these I've seen leak and how many I've replaced. So this will be very common, and this should help out a bunch of people. So let's go ahead and get into it, guys. As with most projects you do on your vehicle, you want to start out by disconnecting your negative battery cable. Now on this Honda here, your radio is going to go into anti-theft mode, and you'll require a code to get the radio to work afterwards. So if you disconnect your battery, be sure you have that code before you do that, okay? Because you will have to enter it in order to get your tunes back. And I always like to start by disconnecting the air inlet tube. I'm going to start down here and then work my way back. I just find that any space you can give yourself to work with, the better. You're not going to have a whole lot of room to begin with, but just a little bit of room helps. Alright, let's go ahead and loosen up this hose clamp right here on the back side of the engine on the throttle body. Just loosen that up like so. Let's go ahead and remove our hoses and stuff from the air inlet tube. Take a pair of vice grips to this. Pull it off like that and hold it. Now we're just going to take and work the air duct off of the throttle body. Just move it back and forth like that. And we're going to take this. We got our vice grips holding that clamp. We're going to hold the metal tube and push the air duct away from the tube and disconnect it like so. And then down here we just release the top half of the air filter housing from the air filter housing. Just pull the whole thing out like so. Now I'm also going to suggest removing this tube from the back side of the valve cover here. Just take your vice grips, pull that clamp up like so. Just gently wiggle this tube back and forth like that, break it loose. Be real gentle with it, you don't want to break the hose. Just pull your hose straight up. And then we're just going to lay it off to the side here. Actually lift this up here. That one up too. Just put it on the other side of your EGR valve there for the time being. Okay, let's go ahead and pull our PCV valve up and set it off to the side, just behind your throttle cable there. And we're going to go ahead and pull these hoses off of this harness right here and just kind of set it loose like that. Now on the back side of this harness, you'll see that you got these little tangs, those little slits with little tangs on them. Just going to push that tang down and pull the harness up just a little bit. Same thing on this side. And that's just going to give us some flexibility. We're not going to disconnect it and remove it all the way, but we're going to have to get down there to that bolt on this side of the Vtec solenoid. And by having that loose, it's going to help us to get to it. Alright, so here is your Vtec solenoid, and we're going to go ahead and pull this connector here off of the bracket. Little tang right there. Push it towards you, and you pull up on that connector, and that will release it from the bracket. Now, in order to disconnect the connector from the harness, push this tang right here down, and pull the two halves apart, like so. You also want to disconnect this electrical connector here, the green one, and it's got a little tang you got to press down also. See that action there? Press it down and pull back on the connector. And do pull on the connector, not the wire, okay guys? And it may help to go ahead and disconnect your distributor, just to get a little added clearance in there. This one's got a little tang that you press down also, just like so. And you pull out on the connector, like that. And we may as well go ahead and disconnect this one too, just to get that whole harness kind of out of the way and tucked off to the side here. We're just going to tuck it up underneath your distributor cap. That's a little bit more exposed. Now it's worth notating here, you see you got your Vtec solenoid in your housing there, and then you got that heater hose that goes from the back of your cylinder head to your heater control valve. You can see it's soaked with oil. In a lot of cases, it's swollen up and the hose is about to break down and start leaking. So check that hose. If it's saturated with oil like that, you may as well go ahead and replace it. I'm not going to replace this in this video, but we will probably get to that one day. But just check that yourself for your own vehicle there. We're going to go ahead and take the top portion of the Vtec solenoid, or the Vtec solenoid, off of the housing, and there's 3 10 millimeter bolts that you'll need to take out. Let's go ahead and loosen those up. Be sure you keep your bolts in a safe place where you're not going to lose them, okay guys? And by taking the top part of the housing off, or the solenoid off of the housing, you're going to give yourself a little bit more room to get to the housing bolts up underneath here. It's going to make your job a little bit more easy rather than just taking the whole thing off in one fell swoop. And remember, your bracket goes on the outside here next to your distributor. Go ahead and wiggle that off just like so. There we go. This is our upper gasket here. And that thing is hard as a rock. These things basically turn into plastic almost, and that's why they leak. This one's not as brittle as I've seen some, but some of them I've been able to take them and just snap them right in half just by bending them just like that. We're going to go ahead and set that off to the side there, or actually throw that away. Now you can see this bolt right here is exposed. There's another one up underneath here, right here, and then another one on this side, just behind your EGR valve, up underneath that wire harness that we loosened up earlier. Let's start with the hardest bolt first, which is the one behind the EGR valve, and kind of push our harness forward a little bit out of the way. We're just going to drop our ratchet with just a 10 millimeter socket on it right down there. We're going to kind of do this by feel a little bit. Get our socket on that bolt head. I'm just going to loosen it up. Now, you're not going to get a whole lot of swing out of this. Now once you got it loose, what I like to do is go ahead and take your ratchet and your socket out of the way. I like to use my middle finger on this hand and my index finger on this hand. Just work that bolt all the way back out. I'm just going to work it all the way out. Alright, now we're going to grab that bolt and use our 2 fingers as like a pincher. Pull that bolt up like that. Don't drop it. Set it off to the side. Now for this bottom bolt right here, what I've found that works the best is a modified 10 millimeter wrench. Now you can see the head here, I've got it kind of shaved down so that way the walls are a little bit thinner. It'll make it easier to get on the bolt there. And I cut it in half. So this, in my opinion, works the best. We just take our hand, work it down in there, find the bolt, put the open end on the bolt there. And then, there's not a lot of throw on that wrench there, so you're going to need a little help to get that bolt broken loose, especially if it's been there for a long time, which usually it is. Just take you an open end wrench, like so. Stick it in there like that. Put your other hand in there. Hold the wrench on the bolt, and what we're going to do with our big open end wrench on the other wrench there is we're going to pull up on it while we're using our fingers to try to loosen that bolt up. And it'll break free like that. Now, be careful. You're going to have a little bit of momentum when that bolt breaks free. Don't hit your sensor here and break the plastic part on it. Well, we got the bolt broken free. Once we got it bolt broken free, we can then loosen it up just a little bit more. Got to reposition the wrench on it, and then reposition and loosen a little bit more. Once you feel like it's freed up pretty good, you can just take 2 fingers and work the bolt all the way out like that. And oh, by the way, the way that a lot of people do this is they remove the water outlet here. You can do it that way too. You're just going to lose your coolant, and you'll probably have to replace this gasket right here in between the intake and the water outlet. But you don't have to remove it. You can do it this way too. The only drawback doing it this way, and really for the other 3 bolts or other 2 bolts there, this is an issue too. You can't really get a torque wrench down in there to torque them down to specification. I suppose if you remove the EGR valve, you'd be able to get the other back bolt there and torque it down to specification. But this way that I'm showing you here is not necessarily by the book. So if you don't feel confident you can get these things tightened up adequately without the valve leaking on you and the housing leaking on you, then you may want to go the route where you have to replace those other items there so that you can get a torque wrench on it. But this is the way that I do it, and this is the way that I've always done it. And all my co-workers that have ever done this, they don't really take all that other stuff off. I'm not saying that's the best thing to do for everybody out there, but it's your decision, it's your car, and you do it the way you want to do it. This is just an alternative. You can choose to do it this way if you want. Just do it at your own risk, and just note that you may not be able to get it tightened down adequately this way. Alright, we got that one. And this one here is a cinch. You just put your ratchet on there and just loosen it right on up. Oh, and I dropped the bolt. That's okay. That's what they got magnets for. Get that bolt out there. Yeah, there we go. Alright, once you got those out, let's go ahead and grab your housing and just pull it right off. And there it is. That's the other gasket, and you got your little screen there. And this thing is rock hard. This is even harder than the other gasket that I showed you. Once you got it out, your biggest challenge is going to be getting this hard gasket out without damaging the surface of the valve body there. Usually what you want to do, what I like to do, I like to go in like right here, kind of pry up on the gasket like so, and you want to pry on the rubber, not the metal housing. You don't want to scrape the metal housing where the gasket sits, or you might end up with a leak afterwards. See, all this surface in here, you don't want to mar it because you want the gasket to seal adequately with it. Now, be careful when you're doing this, because if you hold it upside down like that, you'll see that this little spool valve here will want to come out on you. And it's okay if it does, and I'm going to show you this just in case. Now you see there's a little spring down in that hole there, and if you try to put this back in like so, it won't want to go in on you. It won't want to go down all the way. So what you got to do is go ahead and get ready to catch that spring as it comes out. Go ahead and take that spring and put it in the inside of that spool valve right here, like that. Then take your housing, turn it upside down, and then put your spool valve back in the hole like so, and it will seat correctly, and you're good as gold. And a lot of times what we do, we use a little Brillo pad, not the metal kind, the Chore Boys or whatever. This is made up of some kind of plastic material. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's kind of soft. It's not very abrasive, but it's abrasive just enough to where you can get that all that gunk out, and or all the sludge out, the hard sludge from the oil out of the metal there. So we're just gonna very lightly just kind of buff the surface. You're not gonna work it hard, guys. You're just gonna get that black ring off, just enough to get that black ring off. I'm not pressing hard at all. Let's take our lint-free rag and just wipe that up. There we go. That's beautiful. Perfect. And I'm just going to take the do the same thing to the top of the Vtec solenoid housing here. Just very, very lightly. Just scrape it up there, and you may not get all that shadow taken out, but you know, just get any foreign material off the surface there, because you want to get a good mating surface. And on the inside here, I really don't have to do a whole lot of cleaning on it. There's a little bit of gunk there, but we'll just take the corner of our Brillo and just kind of work it a little bit there. Not real hard again, guys. Just very lightly. And just take and spray some away from this area here. Take and spray some brake cleaning along all over the surface here. Get it cleaned up real good. Spray that out real good with some brake clean. Make sure it's good and dry. Maybe spray some compressed air up in there. Make sure it's good and dry before you go put it back on. Alright, we got it good and cleaned up. Let's go ahead and take our gasket, our new gasket, with our filter on it, and the screen is the filter, by the way. Let's go ahead and sit it down in that hole there, or inside that inlay area there. It's going to kind of press in. It's going to be relatively secure once you get it pressed in real good. Alright, let's go ahead and take one of our bolts, this top one here. We'll start with that one. Go ahead and set our housing in position here. And hold it in position with one hand and get that bolt started with the other. Alright, we got that bolt started. And by the way, it's very rare for an oil leak to have to replace the whole Vtec solenoid on this particular engine here, this 2.3 liter. It's usually the gaskets that go bad. Alright, I got that one started. I'm going to go ahead and get my other top bolt started. I'll hold it in place with one finger. And let's work it in there. There. And we're started. Let's go ahead and get our third bolt started. And this is where your dexterity is tried. And I know you can't really see real good what's going on there, but this is how I gotta do it. Maybe once we get microscopic cameras, I can put you down there and you can see better what I'm doing. Alright, that one's starting very well. Alright, I got it cinched down just enough. I can go ahead and start torquing them down. I'll start with this one. And there's a torque specification for this. You'll need your repair manual to get that information. However, like I said, this is not the procedure used in the manual. So use this procedure at your own risk. As far as getting things tightened adequately, you have to use your best judgment on it. And you really need to check for leaks afterwards, make sure it's not leaking. Tighten that one down too. Good and snug there. And then of course for this bottom one here, we're going to need our trusty wrench that we modified. Now you probably don't need any help when it comes to tightening down this last bolt here using your cutoff wrench. Getting it broke loose is a lot harder than tightening it up. You could probably just use your hand, but you're going to need a good amount of force on that because there's not a whole lot of throw. You're not getting a whole bunch of torque multiplication by using this wrench here. So you got to push a little hard. Not too hard to where you strip it, but a little hard. Let's go ahead and check these again. Now on this one, you want to clean it up too. I wouldn't necessarily recommend spraying brake clean down in those holes there, but you could take you a lint-free rag and wipe it out. And I probably wouldn't use the Brillo on this one. You can if you're real careful, just don't get lint and stuff down in those holes. I'm not saying that anything bad would happen if you do that. I'm just trying to be cautious for you guys. Take your gasket, go ahead and put it in that inlay there. The way that this goes on is the little pigtail comes out this way towards your switch there. And you're going to have to push this down on top of that spool valve. That spool valve is spring loaded, remember. Start these bolts by hand here. And by the way, if you got any dirt or something on the mating surface that this Vtec solenoid mates up to, be sure to clean that up too before you put the Vtec solenoid on. Remember, our bracket goes out on the edge here. See our bracket? And keep holding pressure on it. Switch fingers. Get this bolt in too over here on this side. Alright, let's go ahead and put our ratchet on there and tighten these bolts down. Of course, there is a specification for this. Use your repair manual for that information. And a torque wrench will be needed if you want to torque them down to specification. Alright, let's go ahead and take our electrical connectors that we stuffed up underneath the distributor cap there, and let's go ahead and start reconnecting them. Just give them a little tug once you get them snapped on, make sure they don't come off. There we go. Now we need to put our harness back in place. Remember these hoses here. The skinny black one went in the front. Just pop those down real quick. Don't forget your PCV valve, put it back in. And we got these hoses back over here. Actually, we gotta pop that up real quick. I know we just put that on, but pop that up, get this hose back over here. Pop these back in. Put that back on. Go ahead and take your clamp, squeeze it together and run it on down. Okay, now we got to check it for leaks. We're going to start the vehicle up, and I'm going to look around the Vtec solenoid and the gaskets, make sure nothing's leaking. Alright, we got it running. Going to check it really thoroughly for leaks. Get the mirror down up underneath the valve, looking up to make sure that that main gasket isn't leaking. Looks like we got it. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, if you have any questions, just comment down there in the comment section below. Also, please read the entire description of this before you do this. If you're on a website where this video is embedded, you may have to go to YouTube and actually look this video up on YouTube so that you can actually see the description and read everything in there. I'll have some very important information about this, and also a disclaimer that you'll need to read before you do this. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.